was recognized by Facebook as a best-in-class campaign, which they were mentioning to take to the UN as a best-in-class during the pandemic. It was like jaw-dropping stuff, but tough, and we just had to get through it. My resilience just came from, right, you've now committed yourself. And I'm a strong believer in, once you commit yourself to something, whether it's sort of financially, emotionally, you're going to see it through.
Yeah.
No matter where it lands, you've just got to carry on.
Welcome to Push to Be More with me, your host, Matt Edmondson. Now, this is a show that talks about the stuff that makes life work. And to help us do just that, I am chatting with today's guest, Manish Mak from Formula Media. Now, we're just going to call him Mac because this is the name that he goes by. And so if you hear me calling him Mac throughout the podcast, I'm not being disrespectful. He's from Formula Media, and we're going to be talking about where he's had to push through, what he does to recharge his batteries and to be, as well as what he does to be more. Now, the show notes and transcript from our conversation will be available on our website, pushtobemore.com. And on our website, you can also sign up for our newsletter, and each week we will email you the links from the conversation, the transcripts and all that stuff gets sent to your inbox automatically, and it's direct and it's free. So make sure you sign up for that. Now, this episode is brought to you by Orion Media, which helps entrepreneurs and business leaders set up and run their own successful podcast. You know what? I have found running my own podcast to be insanely rewarding. It opens doors to amazing people like nothing else I have seen. I have built networks. I have made friends and had a platform to champion my customers, my team, and my suppliers. And I think just about any entrepreneur or business leader should really think about having a podcast because it's had such a huge impact on my own business, which of course sounds great in theory, but in reality, there's the whole problem of setting up, distribution, getting the tech right, knowing what the right podcast strategy is. I mean, the list goes on. You see, I love talking to people, just not a big fan of all that other stuff, if I'm honest with you. So Orion Media takes it all off my plate. I get to do what I do, chat to people all day, and the team take care of the rest. So if you're wondering if podcasting is a good marketing strategy for your business, check out orionmedia.com. That's AURION media.com. We will, of course, link to them on the website, Push to Be More, as well. You can find them either way, but do check them out. Okay, so that's the show sponsor. That's Orion Media. Let's talk about Mac, who is a media marketing expert with a passion for pushing boundaries and finding new and emerging media channels. Now, with over 12 years of experience working with some of the world's largest ad agencies and clients, Mac has overcome many challenges in his career, from making the decision to become an entrepreneur to navigating the relentless pace of the media industry. He's led global media strategy for brands like Coke, Sony, and Shell, has won multiple industry awards for his work. Mac, in case he has any spare time, is also a DJ and music producer with a love for music that has influenced his career in media. He's the founder and CEO of Formula Media, a cutting-edge agency that's focused on using data-driven media advertising to make a positive impact on the world. He is passionate about diversity and inclusion in the workplace and is interested in the intersection of media and technology, particularly, as we all are at the moment, in areas like AI and machine learning. Mac, welcome to the show, man. Great to have you. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you for having me on the show, Matt. I've been, it's a busy start of the week, doing proposals to the US and catching up, actually working over the weekend. So actually catching up on some sleep this morning, actually. I was working late last night. So that's been my day, if I'm honest.
Yeah, no, fair. Are you one of these guys that will do that? Will work late into the night and sleep later in the morning? You sort of work better at night, or are you an early bird kind of a guy?
Well, that's a good question. I've been both. I've been an early bird and I've been a night owl, and it just depends on. To be honest, it's a I try and balance my time based on what is required. So if, for example, I've got a big proposal on a Monday and I haven't had time to work on it, then that means the weekend's out and, I'm working on it and I'm working nights, and then I'll catch up on my sleep in the morning. So, I'll get up at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. But then when I've got a nice clear day and it's not so bad, I'll get up early and, I'll make the most of the day. So there's no routine per se in that sense. I just tackle what I need to as and when it comes along.
Okay.
It's happening, yeah.
Yeah, no, friend. Well, to be fair, I used to be one of those guys that could quite happily work late into the night and would sleep, quite happily late in the morning. And I would quite happily work at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I had kids.
Right, yeah, there you go. That's it. And early morning starts then.
Yeah. So my whole life switched around rapidly, which is quite fascinating. So, Mac, listen, like I said, great to have you on the show. Now, one of the things that we were talking about, and let's start with this. So you were one of the first British Asian guys on the radio to as it says here, navigate the relentless pace of the media industry. You've obviously faced and overcome a lot of challenges throughout your career. So let's jump into perhaps what is one of the most pivotal moments in your journey for you. What were some of the things that sort of really stuck out in your journey as challenges?
Probably not a sort of obvious one. I mean, I can list all the obvious ones, but I won't bore you with those. I think one of the biggest challenges was confidence. For me, establishing confidence, being on radio, a presenter on the BBC Asian network, stepping into the limelight, if we're talking about my music career here, which was the first sort of key challenge in my early 20s. Really, coming out of my shell, because I was quite introverted as a person. So it was very intrusive, having cameras on you or being on the radio and speaking to, I don't know, how 3 million, 4 million listeners at the time. Wow. Knowing they're on the other side, it was that sort of, that challenge, that confidence and trying to overcome my internal battles of fear and judgment and what people may think and really then bringing out a personality. So that was that for me was one of my first challenges as a sort of young adult moving into the media and music industry.
I mean, there's a lot there. Jeez, right? So you were on the BBC's Asian network, and so in your early 20s. Can I ask, how did you come across that? Was that just something you stumbled into? Was that a very definite decision to do that? How did that door open?
It was part of a deal with a record label. So I was signed to 2.9 Records, who looked after an artist called Jay Sean. And the Rich project, which were like, as you sort of mentioned, one of the first British Asian artist groups to sort of break the charts. We had as a group and a collective, we had singles in the charts, and we got a show on Kiss FM for 2 years, and then off the back of that show, a tour, Jay Sean's album, a tour for that album. We then got a signing to the BBC Asian Network for a 1 year Saturday afternoon show, so 5 p.m. till 8 p.m. sort of pre-club type show, which we had to drive up to Birmingham every Saturday to do. And it was great fun, don't get me wrong. We had loads of sort of road mileage and time to sort of bond and connect. But it was an incredible time in my life. Peaks and troughs of emotion, money, stability, relationships and experience of things. It was phenomenal.
I'm kind of curious if I can dig into this a little bit. I tell you why I'm kind of curious, because I like podcasting, obviously, and I think whilst it's not 2 or 3 million people yet, I mean, maybe next week.
For sure.
It's interesting that when you start a podcast, there is always the thing that you mentioned, the fear and the confidence is something that you have to overcome. And then there's the discovery of your personality, which has to sort of come out. And again, that's something that you mentioned. You had to figure out who you were on the radio. How did you do that at such a, if I don't mean to sound demeaning, but when I say at such a young age, it makes me sound like an old man, I suppose. But in your early 20s, you've got to figure these two things out. How do I overcome the fear? How do I get confident? And how do I be, I suppose me? How do I bring that personality out? I'm just really curious how you did that.
It's a twofold scenario. The obvious thing is you've got to let go. But anyone can easily say you've got to let go and and sort of embrace what you're faced with. But the truth of the matter and fact of it was that I had to believe in myself and my skill and what I was doing enough to overshadow the fear of judgment and what people may think. So it was a balancing act, a sort of balancing act between, feedback, of course, which is important, but also just, having that innate belief in yourself, like that sort of, whatever it is you're doing, do it with conviction and deliver. In that moment, and that moment should then, have a sort of knock-on effect, and with that knock-on effect of it sort of getting better and better, you build your confidence. So it's not a switch that you turn on. It's an evolving and evolutionary process that continues. I'm still on that journey. It never stops. I think it's you can enjoy it. You can eventually enjoy that sort of journey. Initially, I think when you're a lot younger and you're starting out and you're trying to figure it out, there's a lot of chaos and a lot to navigate through, and there's a lot of thoughts. But I think, as you get better with your business, your skill, your artistry, or whatever it might be, and you deliver that with conviction, and you receive the feedback, and you realize it's good, and it gets better and better. You start delivering that with confidence. And then when you deliver with confidence, it sort of snowballs. And it gets easier over time, I think. But then, it does change. You then sort of, I've had different challenges, which I had to then sort of step back and be like, okay, I can't apply the exact same methodology elsewhere. There are parts of it I can apply, but and there's more to life than a simple state of conviction and confidence. So I think that was what I learned.
So how did you go from being a radio DJ in the music industry to heading up Formula Media? Because it doesn't, I'm not going to lie, it doesn't strike me as a traditional path, from one to the other. And what sort of happened there? What was that quantum leap like?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things. I studied psychology as a degree. My dad, I want to call him out on this, but he was adamant that I followed a sort of, professional route, doctorate route, go down that route. And then I went down music, and, coming from my dad's Indian and coming from an Indian family, they, that's judged upon. That's, if you're an accountant, a doctor, or a lawyer, it's not good enough. So it was, there was that battle. So, and I explored music, and I faced that family internal struggle. My mum was very supportive, and, and I went forth with music. But then I did have a passion for psychology. That's why I studied it, and I didn't just choose the degree to sort of get into psychiatry. I did it also from a personal perspective, to understand the human mind, human behavior, the evolution of human and technology as well, and that relationship, and where that was leading towards. That was my sort of niche area of interest, so to speak. But then I got taken away in the music world, and I've just sort of summarized what happened, which was great. But still, there was something in the back of my mind still niggling away, saying, well, what about revisiting this interest area of yours?
Yeah.
So, but then I had no idea how to do this at the age of 26/27. I'm 4 or 5 years into my music career, really deep in, doing tours, DJing, late nights, night out. I had no idea how to get back to it. So a friend of mine actually helped me get a job at a media company. To be honest, I had no experience on paper at this point, no professional experience on paper. Yes, it's great being on Kids and being on the BBC, but for what I was trying to do, all I had was my degree. So I got into a media company, which was essentially selling media. I was on the sales side of media, and I did well at selling because I had the confidence. I've been on radio, I could communicate well, etc. But I wasn't using my psychological side of my brain enough. So then I looked into the world of the agency landscapes of media agencies and what they do, and essentially they, for those that don't know, buy media. So it's all about sort of strategic thinking around audiences and what's right for the client, which is tough to get into. It's a very small circle. It's it's everyone wants to be in it because it's the sort of the fun side, so to speak. There's a lot of perks, and there were a lot of perks pre-pandemic. So yeah, I mean, that was the obvious next step. And then I did the whole agency landscape. I went from I went to sort of 3-4 agencies before starting my own, and that was the path to formal media.
So okay, so I'm now starting to see the path. And so how long has Formula Media been going?
4 years.
Okay.
Nearly 4 years, yeah.
So let me just try and do the maths in my head. You started it right at the start of the, sort of pre-pandemic time.
Yeah. Tough time. One of the toughest, craziest times, which, I couldn't anticipate, because a year later, 2020, we all know what happened.
Yeah. No, none of us predicted COVID, did we really?
Yeah.
Well, and that's not true. I think the Simpsons predicted, and maybe the movie Contagion. Yeah,
I think so. And I think, is it Bill Gates or Obama? One of the two mentioned it I think it was Obama talking about it.
I know, it was Bill Gates, wasn't it? Bill Gates, they did that video, didn't they? Which circulated like crazy in the middle of the pandemic that he'd recorded like a few years before, saying we're not ready for this. And it turned out all the things that he said came to pass, and you're like, goodness me. I'm surprised no one's gone Bill Gates for, president next, really. But
right.
So you launched your business a year before the pandemic. Like you say, times were tough. So how did you get through that? What were some of the things that you did? I guess mentally more than anything. How did you have that resilience?
Going back to that innate belief, this Formula Media, was a concept in my mind from sort of 2016. It was a few years, 2-3 years before I actually went ahead and did it. Something I wrote down on paper, sat down with a couple of friends, and we sort of mulled over the idea, and sort of sat there in the back pocket. But I think that pivotal time, so 2019, on top of everything that was happening, unfortunately, my father was diagnosed with cancer as well. So, and he lived with me at the time, and I looked after him. So I had this, I took this decision to leave my old agency job, which is great. I was a director there, and good salary, etc. And a friend of mine offered me a role at his company, which is a bar chain, a cocktail bar chain, and as a sort of stopgap head of marketing interim role, where I did that 3 days a week, and then I worked on Formula Media 2 days a week, which was an open discussion, and were happy for me to do that during sort of 2018 into 2019. In 2019. I started transitioning them over into a client, and someone from that company, a really, really nice gentleman called Hoppy, introduced me to the Prince's Trust.
Mm-hmm.
It was a sort of, Mac, I need to meet someone. And he took me down to Facebook, their offices in, oh gosh, I don't remember their offices in Soho. And there was this event happening, and it was like, it was business was meeting young people, and they were doing sort of a handshake scenario around tables. And Vicky York was the innovation director for the Prince's Trust, and she was like, get involved and enjoy it. And then we had this sort of quick chat at the back of the room, and it was like, Hoppy was like, Mac is great. He can do all of these great things with media. Vicky's amazing. She's got this amazing concept starting out called Get Hired with the Prince's Trust. I think you two should speak. We spoke, we had a chat, and long and short of it, she said, look, I have no money to give you, but I've got around 50K to spend on sort of ads on behalf of the Prince's Trust. Would you be up for sort of helping out? And I went, yeah, I mean, it's the Prince's Trust, and I could do this pro bono, and I knew it'd be great for the sort of, the threads and the logo. And so 2019, tail end of 2019, we started this project. When we started talking about this project, it didn't really kick off until 2020, March, April time, 2020, peak sort of pandemic. So it was all a bit like, oh gosh, you've got COVID, there's no longer face to face, you've got to set up this big pro bono project. And if I'm honest, I just pulled together who I could and whatever I could to get this off the ground. I knew I could do, a big chunk of it, but to get it right, I needed the right design. I needed the right, planners. I needed some, just some client support and, just the general agency stuff. So I just started calling on friends and people I knew. And I was fortunate enough to sort of get some support at the time, and just power on through delivering this campaign, which thankfully became an award-winning campaign and was recognised by the Drum Awards alongside VML Y&R, which is one of the WPP's largest agencies. It was recognised by Facebook as a best-in-class campaign, which they were mentioning to take to the UN and as a best-in-class during the pandemic.
Wow.
It was like, jaw-dropping stuff. But tough. We were doing this, for no money and trying to make it work. And I had some sort of other clients to sort of tick us along. But this was the big one, and we just had to get through, and that was it. Just get through it, deliver it, and that was my thinking. That's what my resilience just came from. Right, you've now committed yourself, and I'm a strong believer in once you commit yourself to something, whether it's sort of financially, emotionally, you've got to see it through.
Yeah.
No matter where it lands or ends up, it might go to crap, or you might hit the you might hit the sky, but you just got to carry on until you get to that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, there's an integrity there, isn't there? And it makes a big difference. And I'm sitting here listening to the story and going, this is a phenomenal opportunity that you've sort of carved out with the Prince's Trust, thanks to, was it Hoppy, which is a great name. And also at the same time, it's a lot of, I get why this is such a task, for want of a better expression, why there's a lot involved with that. So post Prince's Trust, right? It's award winning. It's been recognised by some great companies. Did all of that hard work pay off for you guys? Was there what's the proverbial pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, or is it not quite worked out like that?
I would say yes. I would say it I had this belief that if we see this through and we do deliver this, because I remember having a conversation with one of my colleagues that was supporting me at the time, Billy, who was like, Mac, I mean, we're doing all of this and there might be nothing off the back of it, you know, and that's the reality of what we're going through right now. And I really had to sort of convince him and myself that there will be. You know, what gave me that idea? It's a sort of, you know, it's for how my brain works. I just believed in something, and it usually comes to fruition. If I, you know, maybe not exactly how I had imagined it, but I knew this is big, and I felt it, and it was something, you know. I'm a strong believer in instinct as well. So, you know, if your instinct tells you that something's right, you just go for it. And that's all I had. That's literally all I had. And I will say it was the Prince's Trust, which, of course, you know, the King's Trust probably it should be called now. But
that's a good point, actually. I wonder what they will call it now.
Yeah. So, at the end of that, of course, like that was my pitch. You know, we've done this for the Prince's Trust. We can do it for you. You know, and we have worked with other charities since, and onboarded another great charity, Springboard UK, we launched a program for them called CareerScope, which is also sort of helping people, or helping the hospitality industry during the pandemic, where it needed the most, to sort of upskill people, provide finance and advice on how to get into hospitality or move within. So if you're a chef and, you know, you wanted to become a more advanced chef, then this is the path to do it. Up and all over the country. So I was working with the DWP, Job Centre Plus, and the Springboard charity, launching this program digitally called CareerScope. They already had it in person. That's the person at the Job Centre. So we helped launch the digital hub and get people signed up to it, which is, you know, still running and a big success. We're getting, you know, near to 200 sign-ups a month to the hub from scratch. So there's a lot that's happened in a very short space of time. We know, and I still do take moments to look back and think, wow, like so much has happened. So yes, a lot did happen. The ball rolled. You know, at one point last summer 2021, we had up to 15 plus clients. We had a team of 12 plus more remotely. We had a great office, which we don't have at the moment, but we're more remote now. We do have an office, but we had a sort of fixed office, and it was incredible. It was an incredible journey, very quickly, which I enjoyed.
So you're on this incredible journey, which is motoring along really quickly. How do you fill your tank? How do you recharge your batteries whilst it's all going crazy like that, and you're working into the wee late hours of the weekend, getting all your proposals ready? How do you do that?
So it's a really good question. It's because it's discipline is the word that comes to mind, because you know, I have to be really disciplined and try and switch off. You know, that switch off thing. I don't like to switch off, because I always feel like you can grow and build and grow and build and grow. And that's my one side of my personality. But then the other side of my personality is a hippie. I says, no, just chill out. Like, go to just go to the lake, go to the forest, just shut up and just chill. So there's two sides of me, and if I let one side win too much, then, you know, it'll kill the other. So I'm going to feed both. And the way I feed my hippie, I guess, is, you know, I do hot yoga every Wednesday night, which is pretty intense. But, you know, I've made an active effort. I committed myself this year. So I said, right, I'm going to buy 40 passes for the year, so that I can go at least sort of once / every other 2 weeks, once a week / every, bi-weekly, for the rest of the year. You know, things might come up in between or whatever, but now I've made that financial commitment. and I've got to go. Okay. Same thing with the gym. I've got a gym membership. And Billy and I, who's the media director from the media, we make it a point to go on a Monday. So we kick off the week by going to the gym. It's a sort of board meeting / gym session. That's the way I like to sort of put it. I also really got into like Wim Hof and practicing those types of techniques. So I do take a cold shower, and I do take a cold shower every morning. I try and get breathing practices in as much as possible. I meditate. I've created my own meditation. When I say created my own meditation, it's bits of everything. It's a bit of sort of, things from apps, like Calm and Headspace, but also I sat with an Indian guru once who showed me how to do chakra style meditation. And then I've been to meditation centers in Covent Garden, and I used to work near there. And I learned creative meditation techniques. So I've overlaid that with my musical knowledge, and I've created a sort of breathing, creative chakra style, like personal meditation thing. Where I give, thanks to God, and I visit places, and I really just go inwards for a little while, and then come back to reality. And then, I make active plans with friends and family. So I'll make sure I go and spend some time with my mom or my dad, or, like Friday just gone out, I had a good sort of dinner with one of my closest friends, and he's getting married, and I just make sure, that time's in and we have a glass of wine. I don't drink. I try not to drink because I know that that's just, sending me up and down too much, and it has a knock-on effect, and I'm getting too old. So I struggle for 3-4 days. So, so I'll have a good night out and a session when I need to, once or twice a year. But, the regular Friday night drink had to stop. I've just had to make some sacrifices in places where, and flip those out with a different way of thinking. And I think that's hopefully that answers your, like, how
you feed the hippie question.
How I feed the hippie. Yeah, that's
I think that's a great quote. We were talking earlier, weren't we, about what's the title of this podcast? And we always fix the titles after the recording. I wonder if it's going to be called How to Feed Your Hippie.
I think so. I think that's it. That's a great topic. Oh, you'll get loads of listeners.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone's got a bit of hippie in them. Yeah.
Everyone's got a bit of hippie in them. And it'd be a great book title, actually, How I Feed My Hippie. And the Wim Hof thing piqued my curiosity. My son has got into this, and so every morning he has this cold shower, and he's waxing lyrical about it at the moment. And I'm like, not going to lie, Mac, I don't get it.
I didn't like shower. It's a nightmare. But and I'm sure your son could probably sort of vouch. Once you get over the barrier and the pain, and your mind, there is a switch in this scenario where you go from that I hate a cold shower to I love the feeling. I love the feeling now. And believe you me, I'm not a cold shower person. I love a nice, warm, hot shower every morning. That's my go-to. So, I started slowly. I tried a few, so I turned the heat down and, decrease, and got to the cold point. And now I just, when I go to the gym, I go sauna, cold shower. And daily I try that cold shower thing. I haven't got to the tub scenario. I mean, I don't have space for it right now, but if I had the space and I didn't live in London and I had a nice big garden, I would probably get a nice tub. I'd probably go all the way. But the shower works. Yeah. It just makes me feel better. There's a lot of science behind it, which I'm sure, Wim Hof will tell you about, but I'm not so fussed about the science. It gives me energy. It just wakes. It just wakes me up.
It works, right? It's one of those,
wakes me up.
Yeah. I mean, I get the coming out of the sauna, going in the cold shower thing, because I'm stupid hot. I need to cool down, and that there is an appeal for that. But yeah, Zach, my son he's just back from uni, and is like, Dad, have we got a container that I can just put ice water in? He wants to sort of, and I'm just like, dude.
Yeah, just
It's
pulling
just
out buckets and yeah.
yeah. He says, I've got inflammation I need to deal with. I'm like, okay.
Right.
So yeah, really interesting. And watch this space. I don't know whether I'll do cold showers. I probably would get into an ice bucket though. I don't know why I'd find that different. I don't know. That's just weird.
I think that's the way to do it, really. Showers are harder, apparently, because the
Yeah.
science behind that is when you're moving, you're breaking. So when you sit in a cold ice tub, because you're still, your body, I'm probably really bad at explaining this, but your body creates some sort of defense where you don't feel the cold as much. But when you're moving around in a shower, you're breaking up that defense, so you feel the cold more.
Yeah.
So there's something about that. So try the ice tub first.
Yeah, be interesting. Very good. So, next 2 to 3 years of life, where do you see it heading to, Mac? What's on the horizon for you?
I mean, the big topic right now is AI, right? We are already we are using AI. Our the Formula Media is based on data, technology, and AI. Full stop. But there is a new version of that AI, which we are in discussions and talking about now. So, taking away some of the, let's call it the mundane, laborious tasks that we go through day to day, and then opening up that freedom and time for creative thinking and utilizing that more. It's not replacing humans, which I know there's a lot of sort of scare about that, and it is something to sort of something of concern. That when it comes to things like data analysis, putting things together in data, overlaying that with open source information that's already available, and then also plugging that into channels, media channels, to make clients' money go further, and more higher impact, lower cost, less sort of laborious for us, higher impact for clients, and there's more fun and creativity involved. And so that's that for the next 2-3 years. That's going to be my focus in terms of getting that right and built and set up. But also, we're still in early stages of getting out there. We've never done our own marketing. I've never done anything like this. It's all been very organic up until now, as you know, the Prince of Trust and the knock-on effect. But I still do think there is a something to be said and promoted for Formula Media, what we really stand for and what why we exist. And there is a big why we exist. Outside of the data, technology, AI back, obvious business sensible stuff, there is a bigger purpose. The logo is a serotonin clinical data logo. The icon you'll see in the Formula Media logo is clinical data for serotonin, because it goes back to my psychology days, and also some of my experiences with, say, Shell as a client, where I know media can be used for good and it can be used for bad, and where we can use media for good, which has power and impact for clients that are doing good and making a difference to people's lives. Like today, I was talking to a client they're combining golf and fitness, in a really interesting way, which is going to make a difference to people's lives. Families can go and share that. So if you're interested in golf, you can go and play golf. There's a bar, there's a gym, something for the family to do. And that's the where we can really apply ourselves for charities, for technology that's helping humans, for hospitality, leisure, travel, events, things that create dopamine, serotonin, and value to people's lives. So bringing those two things together, I think for me is really important, but also pushing the whole diversity equation. Being Asian, it's an Asian CEO and founder. It's a big statement, I think, in today's world. And I'm trying to really push boundaries, status quos, and really show that this can be done without holding the flag of the whole diversity agenda, but bringing people into the fold. And I'm part of Media for All, sort of diversity media group. I think they're not for profit group that I'm getting more involved in, and there's a bigger picture here to establish, which I don't think has been established just yet. We've done some great stuff, got some great clients. It's all coming together, but I think there is still another level to that in the next 2-3 years.
And it'd be interesting to see where the journey takes you, isn't it, really? And I'm really curious to find out, really intrigued to see where it all sort of heads to. Because I think, being British Asian, and there is the diversity aspect of it. And just by putting yourself out there more and more, kids see that, don't they? And this is important and super cool. So, Mac, listen, we've got to the stage of the show where we go for the question box. Dun, dun, dun. I need some dramatic music to go alongside this. I keep saying that. I really should find some. And this is where, if you're not watching the video, and we know that 99.9% don't because you listen to this on an audio podcast, I have a deck of cards in my hands, good sir. And you're going to say stop, and I'm going to stop, and we're going to ask that question on that card.
Stop.
Right there, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
So, that's an interesting question. Okay. What work were you doing the last time you forgot time altogether?
Oh, wow. What work was I doing when I forgot time altogether?
Yeah.
I would say it's when I'm DJing.
Okay.
I go into a meditative state, right? And I think if you really go deep into your meditative state, time doesn't exist and all that deep stuff. But yeah, that I was DJing, and I was really enjoying it. It was a private party, and it was quite a long set. It was sort of 4 or 5 hours in reality, but it flew. Time flew, and I forgot about time, and I really just immersed myself and enjoyed that moment of my life. And I think it's tough to replicate that. There isn't. You've probably heard it, or you probably come across it. The reason why people love DJing and become DJs and whatnot. And yes, there's all of the, there's all of the show and clout and money and blah blah blah. But I think there is something else. There's a sort of feeling that can't be replicated, which is related to sort of the loss of time, I would say.
So do you still do a lot of DJing?
I wouldn't say a lot, but I do still play a lot of private parties, and I played in Cannes Lions Festival last year, and most likely again this year. And I do a lot of private events, whereas before I would do what's known as the circuit, which is playing various clubs and around the world or whatever it might be. And now I just do sort of yacht parties and fun stuff. That's like that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting answer, and I think it's a really interesting question, because to me it talks of this thing called flow, doesn't it? The state of flow, which is maybe an old-fashioned term that we used to use. When do you sort of get that sense of flow? And it's interesting for you that's DJing, because I would say if I was to answer that question, I would say probably every time I do a podcast, I start talking, and before I look at the clock now and I'm thinking, goodness me, I need to wrap this up at some point. So
right.
You just need to, it just disappears every time. It's fascinating.
I love it.
So, Mac, listen, As you know, this show is sponsored by Orion Media, which specializes in helping good folks like yourself set up and run their own successful podcast. So, me bring it around.
We should talk about that. We should definitely talk about that then, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. You should definitely be on your podcast. But let's just fast forward. Let's assume you have your podcast. Out of the people that have impacted your life, past and present, whether people you've met or books you've read, podcasts you listen to, or whatever it is, I'm curious, who would be some people you would love to interview on your podcast and why?
Well, who would I like to interview? I mean, because we're on the musical topic, I will continue that first. Fisher, he's a DJ out there, an Australian DJ. He's an absolute crazy nutter DJ, but I just think it'll be such a fun podcast. Like, he's wild. So I would love to just get in his head as well and find those relatable topics. And then I would also like to have a chat with Sir Martin Sorrell from the media world, who WPP ex-WPP CEO, now invested and CEO in multiple businesses, and I'd just like to understand his perspective on the journey to CEO of WPP and what really happened and how it happened and the pitfalls, the lessons, the challenges and the wins. And then more modern, who runs podcasts themselves, Stephen Bartlett. I'd love to have a chat with Stephen Bartlett too, because he's from the same realm, media, had his own media agency, but more on the social side of things, influence led. He's great on podcasts. He's on Dragon's Den. He's a good business mind. I think we would have a good fun chat, and then maybe someone from the more sort of hippie side, the spiritual side, would let's just again feed the hippie.
Feed the hippie, yeah, of course.
Feed the hippie, there are a few people I've come across, Jay Shetty being one of them. I've got to give him a shout out, and he's obviously done a lot on that side. But there's a whole bunch of others, Bishin from Mind Valley and someone called Jade who's into astral projection and Wim Hof. That would be so fun.
That'd be an interesting conversation.
That would be interesting. Yeah, I think that'd be quite wacky. And Russell Brand. These are all, I'm naming some of the, all the people that have podcasts and that are quite famous and, I'll probably interview my mate as well, just to see his perspective on life and how, make some comparisons. But in an ideal scenario, those would be the sort of my go-tos.
This is, Mac, perhaps my favorite question I ask guests, because it always fascinates me why people say what they say and who they say, to the point where I think you tell me what you think. We're thinking of moving that question to the start of the show and starting the conversation off the basis of that. So why did you say that person? Why did you say that person? What is it about them? And just seeing where that conversation goes. We might try it. You never know.
I think you should. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, that's a good idea.
See how we get on.
I guess you'll get a quick indication of the areas, if you know who they are, that they're interested in, and where you can navigate the conversation.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting. Listen, Mac, it's been great chatting, and like I said, it's one of those things where I blink and the clock has come to its end. How do people reach you? How do they connect with you if they want to know more about you, if they want to know more about Formula Media and what you guys get up to there? What's the best way for them to reach out?
You can reach out to me directly if you like, on Mac, M-A-K, @formulamedia.com. Or you can add me on LinkedIn if you prefer, and you want to check me out first and all that jazz. It's just Max Formula, M-A-K Formula, after your LinkedIn.com/. So just type in Mac Formula, I should come up on LinkedIn. If not, email me directly. I'll be happy to have a chat.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, we will, of course, link to Mac's info in the show notes, which you can get along for free, along with the transcript at pushtobemore.com. Or if you sign up to the newsletter, it will be making its way to your inbox. Mac, listen, thanks so much, man, for coming on to the podcast. Great to meet you.
Pleasure.
Great to chat about feeding the inner hippie and to hear the stories. I just thoroughly was enjoying your story about the radio. I'm not going to lie, just because it interests me. But no, it's been great. Honestly, genuinely appreciate it. Thanks for coming on, man. It's been a blast.
Thank you very much, Matt. And I love what you're doing. I hope you keep inspiring and growing your podcast, and you get some good people on here because these are the types of conversations that make a difference to other people's lives. And, I think people take a lot of value out of just listening to stories and how other people have done it and where they've been and what they've done. And just a sort of quick side note, I think there's a lot of assumptions can be made on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook and these days, and this type of authenticity, hearing it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, is the best way and invaluable. So it's great that you're doing it.
No, I appreciate it, man, and totally agree. I'd much rather do this than post on Instagram, not gonna lie. Much more interesting, very much more interesting. And it's one of the reasons why I love podcasting, like you say. I mean, if you think about the conversation that we've had in the last hour, you don't normally get to have those conversations with people until you've known them for a really long time.
That's right.
Do you
get so much so quickly. Yeah,
you do. It's a beautiful thing. So thanks for being so open and telling us your story. It's been brilliant. So huge thanks again, Mac, for joining me today. Also, a big shout out to today's show sponsor, Orion Media. If you are wondering whether podcasting is a good marketing strategy for your business, do connect with them at orionmedia.com. That's AURION media.com. We will, of course, link to them in the show notes as well. Now, be sure to follow Push to Be More wherever you get your podcasts from, because we've got yet more great conversations lined up, and I don't want you to miss any of them. And in case no one has told you yet today, you are awesome. Yes, you are. Just created awesome. It's a burden you have to bear. Mac has to bear it. I have to bear it. You've got to bear it too. Now, Push to Be More is produced by Orion Media. You can find our entire archive of episodes on your favorite podcast app, the team that makes this show possible. It's Sadaf Bainon, Estella Robin, and Tanya Hutzalak. Our theme music was written by Josh Edmondson. And as I mentioned, if you would like to read the transcript or show notes, head over to the website pushtobemore.com, where you can also sign up for our weekly newsletter and get all of this good stuff direct to your inbox, totally for free. So that's it from me. That's it from Mac. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a fantastic week wherever you are in the world. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.